Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Saṅghāṃ Anuttarāṃ Upacayāṃ Namasami. Sometimes I'll include that Anuttarāṃ Upacayāṃ, sometimes not. That's a nice, I know that's how Ajahn Ñāṇiko starts the Dhamma talks sometimes. And I'm recollecting that today just because Longpo is here for a day. He's over at Sandivihara, and he'll be here with us for the Jizo Bodhisattva enshrinement tomorrow morning. And so just having some brief exchanges with him today, and partly just developing a deeper appreciation and gratitude for what he's given to us in terms of building up this monastery, and then passing it on to the next generations. So for myself, I'm now learning some of the things that he had to learn in his early days as an abbot. And so we had a brief exchange today, and I was just saying, yeah, maybe Longpo, maybe we won't have much time to talk together right now, but maybe after the Vasa I can tell you about all my dukkha. But then I said, well, in brief, it's just kind of like, it's easy to do things and run things. Actually, running things is easy. The hard part is holding on to things. That's what causes the suffering. So what I'm having to learn now is how to not hold on. He said, yes! Now you know what I had to go through. Now you're learning about the process I've gone through. So that felt very good. So just that, that he's still here, that he's gone through all these learning processes and all these difficulties. It's quite amazing. So we need a lot of patience. Those of us who stick with the practice long term, then we need patience, vast and broad patience, deep patience. That's really the only way to make it through. If we give in to things like boredom or restlessness, we're pretty much done. So it takes a lot of patience, and sometimes things just seem like they might be stagnating, or things might seem bleak, or we might feel a bit depressed. So we come back to that sense of deep and vast patience. Very important. Or we might feel like practice isn't progressing the way we would like it to. So we just have to be very patient. Or it's like Longpo Cha would say, so somebody asked Longpo Cha, people would ask him like, why isn't my practice progressing? Why isn't this happening? Why am I not able to get into samadhi? Why am I not able to make progress in the practice? And he would just say, you have to be patient. So that's one of the hallmark teachings you find in the Thai forest tradition. Just be patient. And it's not the kind of patience, it's not like patience like gritting our teeth and bearing it and hoping for it to be over at some point. But this is kanti. The word kanti in Pali and it's one of the paramis, kanti parami. This is where we develop that ability to be with that which is unpleasant and not make a problem out of it. So that's kanti. So a very necessary quality to be developing. And so often we get caught in the becoming, like the becoming energy. So I want to take on this practice, I want to take on this determination, this some sort of adhitthana, but there's a sense of, in a way we take refuge in that, having a list or having a bunch of check boxes that we can check off that we've done each day. And then there's that sense of perhaps feeling a little bit more okay about ourselves, or feeling a sense of accomplishment, that we checked all the boxes of what we're supposed to do each day. But then we feel bad when we aren't able to check some of those boxes. But really that's just more the becoming. That's where we want to have something tangible. So like doing a work project or fixing something in the monastery, those are all wholesome and good things, and we see the tangible fruits of our efforts, and yet it's still becoming. So how do we step back and stop? Where is that place of stopping? How do we just stop and abide and develop that contentment? So that is possible. That is possible within whatever's arising in the mind. That's always possible, to step back from that and not make a problem out of what's arising in the mind. Because the nature of the mind is just to have different things arise and pass away, and that's the mind. The thoughts in the mind are like passing clouds. So there's dark clouds, there's wispy light clouds, sometimes there's no clouds. So we don't really have to make a problem out of the types of clouds that are passing by, because they're just clouds, and they will pass by, and they're always going to keep changing. They're ephemeral, they're impermanent. So to develop that sense of patience, where we can just be with the clouds of the mind, be with whatever's arising in the mind. But the important thing, as we're discussing a little bit at tea time tonight, is to not follow the mind, specifically when we're sitting in meditation or doing walking meditation. Then whatever arises in the mind, say we get bored, there's that boredom where we might feel like, I just want to do something or consume something. I don't really know what it is I want necessarily, but it's just something, anything other than the dreary present moment of whatever's in my mind right now. So we have the kind of ideals where we want to be the ideal practitioner. We read the suttas, we want to meet up with these ideal states, and yet then we do the practice and the mind isn't ideal. There's different things that arise in the mind, and the mind is just there. It's messy. The human nature is it's always just kind of messy, and so that doesn't match the ideal. And if we want it to match the ideal, then we're going to suffer about that. So just getting in touch with the human nature, the humanness of the mind. And that's really important. And being patient with that. So it's not about like trying to shove the mind into a box or shove the mind into being like a certain ideal. We want the mind, we think, we're supposed to have these and these qualities for the first jhana, so we might try to like create that in our mind. So but just to simplify everything, so we don't need to make the practice very complicated. We don't need to say, I need to create these 5 factors in the mind so that I can get, a certain ideal state. So just that whole attitude is antithetical to the meditation practice. So, but the attitude of patience, the attitude of deep and vast patience is going to be quite helpful, and it's going to aid us in the cultivation of just peace and contentment and a sense of ease and well-being. So coming back to this idea that happiness or sukha leads to samadhi. So the progression of things in the suttas, the Buddha talks about happiness being a prerequisite for samadhi, not the other way around. It's not that we get our samadhi and then we're happy, but that it's happiness as a prerequisite for samadhi. So how do we look after that happiness? How do we cultivate that happiness? So to focus more on that, rather than getting the right meditation technique and getting the samadhi so we can feel more happy. But that's not the order, that's not the way things progress. So the cause of the mental stability, the mental firmness, the cause has to be there, and the cause is happiness. And there's the famous phrase in the suttas, the happy mind is easily concentrated. So we can just think about that for a minute. We can do like a thought experiment. We can even if we're not feeling happy right now, we can imagine, why would that be? Happiness leading to the settled mind. Well, how does that work? Why would that be? And it makes perfect sense, actually. So if we're content and we don't want anything and we're peaceful and happy within ourselves in the moment, so if we're sitting here and we just have that thought, I could just keep sitting here. I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to do anything. I could just keep sitting here. Even if I'm not meditating, I could just keep sitting here. I'm totally content and don't have a project I need to do, don't really have anything I need to take care of in the moment, and just developing that contentment of just being right here, right now. And once that we build up that sense of contentment, of course the mind is going to want to settle, because it's not bopping around here and there, it's not being sent out here and there, it's not agitated. So when there's happiness, when there's sukha, then the mind is not, it's not in that state of seeking. So when it's not in that state of seeking, then that's when it can start to settle. So that's it. That's the practice. We just do that. Just do that, and that's enough. Of course, there's other things we need to do, perhaps when time and place, when different hindrances and obstructions arise in the course of the practice that come and disturb our sense of contentment, disturb our sense of ease and well-being. Then we might need to pick up different practices of the Buddha. If the mind just can't stop proliferating about the past and the future, then perhaps we need to apply the antidote of the Marananusati, the death contemplation or recollection of death. Or if the mind just can't let go of a certain irritation or anger, then maybe the metta kammatthana, or developing forgiveness and goodwill, that needs to be cultivated. So we can apply certain antidotes, certain recollections, depending on time and place. But then if there's that sense of non-agitation, that sense of ease and well-being in the moment, then that's it. We just do that. And we just stick with that. We just stay with that. So when something unpleasant happens to us, or something unpleasant happens around us, then there's that holding on that can occur. And the holding on is really one of the main causes of suffering, is holding on. So bringing it up in the mind again and again. What am I going to do about this? How am I going to solve this problem? Why is this happening? Or what if it all falls apart? So that's a thought you can have as an abbot. What if it all falls apart? What if everything just falls apart? So that's the holding on. So then that ability just to say, well, while meditating, all I got to do is just sit here and cultivate contentment in the moment, and just release all those things, let go of all those things, and then it's not suffering. That's not a problem. So, okay, well that's interesting. When I hold on, it's suffering. And when I don't hold on, it's not suffering. So that's interesting. Why didn't I see that before? It's so simple. But then the mind just holds on again and again. Because deep down inside, this is why I think the Thai forest ajahns, they talk about the heart so much. So there's in Thai you have like mind, which is jit, comes from the word chitta, but then you have heart, which is jai. And a lot of times they'll say jit jai, which is like mind heart. They'll combine the two. And the word chitta in Pali, it's not totally clear exactly. It's more like the heart, but it's also the mind. So that's what they say in Thai, jit jai, they combine the two together. But then when they talk about jai, or the heart, so I like that too, because you think about it on a deeper level. And so in the mind, I can intellectually know that, yes, holding on is suffering, and not holding on is non-suffering. I can see that, but then why does the mind keep holding on? Why does it keep grabbing onto things? That's because on a very deep level, on the heart level, it doesn't yet know. There's still the ignorance there. There's still the delusion that says holding on is going to bring some benefit somehow. That the holding on is actually going to bring some sort of benefit, well-being, some sort of addition. But that's not, in reality, that's not the case. But on a very deep level, when the heart isn't yet trained, it doesn't fully know that. So that's also the practice, and then that comes from that constant cultivation of contentment and wholesome dhammas, cultivating wholesome dhammas, meaning bright, positive mental states, also positive heart qualities. Things like well-wishing, things like compassion. So we develop those wholesome dhammas. And then the effort to relinquish the unwholesome dhammas, things like anger, greed, selfishness, we try to lessen, we relinquish and make less. We subtract those things. And the reason this is difficult is on a very deep level, we don't yet know that. So one of the main tenets of the Buddha's teaching, this is the Dhamma Niyamata, or the normality of the Dhamma, the not otherwiseness of the Dhamma, the always nature of the Dhamma is that wholesome mental states can't lead to suffering. So wholesome mental states lead to happiness, and unwholesome mental states can only result in suffering. This is not otherwiseness of the Dhamma, or the exact nature of the Dhamma. So, and one of the qualities of a stream enterer, of a sotapanna, is that they've let go of doubt, and one of the things that the doubt referred to here is that they no longer are perplexed about wholesome and unwholesome states. So they no longer have doubt about that particular point, that a wholesome state can only lead to happiness and an unwholesome state can only result in suffering. Now, this isn't yet transcendent happiness. This is still a sense of happiness within samsara, within the conditioned realm. But the Buddha is talking about getting to that place of non-suffering through happiness, through conditioned happiness. So developing that sense of contentment, patience, and well-being. It's not that we get ourselves more and more wound up, more and more into a state of suffering and misery, and then we pop into nibbana somehow. That doesn't work that way. But it's cultivating more and more wholesome mental states and more happiness and well-being. And it's kind of like the wheel of samsara, and you have the bottom, which is suffering, and the top, which is happiness. They're still within the conditioned realm, but the Buddha wants us to let go. We let go from the top. We can't let go when we're being crushed at the bottom, but we can let go when we're hanging on at the top. That's where we can let go of the wheel. So just putting in a plug for developing patient endurance, kanti barami, contentment, that sense of not holding on to things, that sense of not holding on to specifically the unwholesome, so not holding on to things, that contemplation of non-suffering, and developing that, making much of that. Leave that for reflection this evening.